The squared circle has witnessed countless battles, but some matches ended in tragedy that shocked the world and changed professional wrestling forever. Behind the bright lights and scripted entertainment lies a dangerous reality where one wrong move can turn spectacle into catastrophe. If you're ready to hear about the darkest moments in wrestling history, hit that subscribe button because this story goes deeper than anyone expected. Professional wrestling walks a razor-thin line between performance art and genuine athletic combat. Every night, wrestlers put their bodies on the line, trusting their opponents to execute moves that look devastating while keeping them safe. But sometimes the trust breaks down. Sometimes the script goes horribly wrong. And in the most tragic cases, wrestlers have lost their lives in the ring while the cameras were rolling and fans watched in horror. Owen Hart was one of the most respected technical wrestlers in the business. The youngest member of the legendary Hart wrestling family, Owen had earned his place through pure talent and dedication. On May 23, 1999, at the Over the Edge pay-per-view event in Kansas City, Owen was scheduled to make a comedic entrance as his character the Blue Blazer, descending from the rafters of Kemper Arena in a superhero costume. This type of entrance had been done before in wrestling, but this night something went catastrophically wrong. The harness mechanism failed and Owen fell 78 feet to the ring below. Paramedics rushed to save him, but the injuries were too severe. He was pronounced dead at a nearby hospital, leaving behind his wife and 2 young children. The wrestling world went into mourning, and the event raised serious questions about performer safety that the industry had long ignored. The death of Owen Hart wasn't technically at the hands of a rival, but it exposed the dangerous culture within professional wrestling where spectacle often trumps safety. However, there have been cases where the actions of one wrestler directly led to the death of another during a match, and these incidents remain the most controversial and heartbreaking in sports entertainment history. Oro was a beloved Mexican wrestler known for his high-flying lucha libre style. On October 26, 1993, he faced off against El Hijo del Perro Aguayo in a match at a small venue in Mexico. During the bout, Aguayo attempted a routine maneuver where he threw Oro out of the ring. The move itself wasn't particularly dangerous and had been performed thousands of times by countless wrestlers. But this time Oro landed at an awkward angle, striking his head on the concrete floor outside the ring. He tried to continue the match but collapsed moments later. Medical personnel rushed him to the hospital where doctors discovered he had suffered a severe brain hemorrhage. Despite emergency surgery, Oro died from his injuries. He was only 22 years old and had his entire career ahead of him. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the Mexican wrestling community and sparked debates about safety measures at smaller venues that lacked proper padding and medical equipment. Perro Aguayo Jr., the son of the wrestler involved in the Oro incident, would himself become part of one of wrestling's most shocking tragedies decades later. On March 20, 2015, Aguayo Jr. was wrestling in a tag team match in Tijuana, Mexico, facing Rey Mysterio Jr. and other competitors. During the match, Mysterio executed his signature move where he sends his opponent into the ropes, setting up for his finishing maneuver. Aguayo Jr. bounced off the ropes and appeared to be in position for the next sequence, but something was terribly wrong. He was slumped motionless against the ropes while the match continued around him. At first, the other wrestlers and even some fans thought it was part of the act. But as seconds turned into minutes and Aguayo Jr. didn't move, panic set in. The match was stopped and medical personnel entered the ring. Aguayo Jr. was rushed to the hospital but was pronounced dead shortly after arrival. The autopsy revealed he had suffered cervical spine trauma that caused a stroke. He was only 35 years old and one of the biggest stars in Mexican wrestling. The Aguayo Jr. incident devastated Rey Mysterio, who had been friends with the fallen wrestler and never intended any harm. The match footage was analyzed frame by experts trying to determine what went wrong. Some suggested that Aguayo Jr. may have already been injured from an earlier move in the match and the final sequence simply revealed the damage that had already been done. Others pointed to the accumulation of years of punishment on his neck and spine from a career of high-risk wrestling. Regardless of the cause, the tragedy highlighted how quickly things can go wrong in the ring even during routine moves that wrestlers perform hundreds of times without incident. Mitsuharu Misawa was a legend in Japanese professional wrestling, considered one of the greatest technical wrestlers of all time. His matches were known for their stiff, hard-hitting style that blurred the line between choreographed performance and legitimate combat. On June 13, 2009, at age 46, Misawa was competing in a tag team match for Pro Wrestling Noah, the promotion he had founded. His opponent Akitoshi Sato delivered a belly-to-back suplex, a common wrestling move where one wrestler lifts and throws another backwards. But when Misawa landed, he didn't get up. He lay motionless in the ring as his tag team partner and the referee immediately signaled for help. CPR was performed in the ring for 30 minutes before Misawa was transported to the hospital, but he never regained consciousness. The autopsy revealed he had suffered a cervical spinal cord injury that caused his death. The wrestling world lost one of its greatest performers, and questions arose about whether the brutal style of Japanese wrestling had finally taken its ultimate toll. The death of Misawa was particularly shocking because he was such an experienced veteran who had survived thousands of matches over a nearly 30-year career. If someone with his skill and knowledge could die from a routine move, it meant no wrestler was truly safe no matter how talented or careful they were. The incident led to reforms in Japanese wrestling promotions, with increased medical oversight and mandatory training in safer techniques. Malcolm Kirk, who wrestled under the name King Kong Kirk, died following a match in England in August 1987. During a bout against Big Daddy, one of British wrestling's biggest stars, Kirk collapsed in the ring after taking several moves. He was removed from the venue on a stretcher and died shortly afterward. The exact cause of death was listed as a heart attack, but controversy surrounded the incident for years. Some blamed the physical toll of the match itself, while others suggested Kirk had pre-existing health conditions that should have prevented him from wrestling that night. Big Daddy, whose real name was Shirley Crabtree, was devastated by the incident and it affected him for the rest of his life, though he was never held legally responsible. Plum Mariko was a Japanese women's wrestler who suffered fatal injuries during a match in August 1997. She was performing in a bout when she took a particularly hard fall that resulted in acute subdural hematoma, bleeding on the brain. She fell into a coma and died 2 months later without ever regaining consciousness. She was only 29 years old. Her death led to increased safety protocols in Japanese women's wrestling, but it came too late for Mariko herself. These tragedies share common threads that reveal uncomfortable truths about professional wrestling. Despite the predetermined outcomes, the physical risks are entirely real. Wrestlers perform athletic feats that would be dangerous even with perfect execution, and they do it night after night with bodies that accumulate damage over time. A move that was safe when a wrestler was 25 might be deadly when they're 45 and their body has absorbed years of punishment. Pre-existing injuries, often hidden or downplayed because missing shows means losing money, can turn routine bumps into fatal accidents. The culture of toughness in wrestling has historically discouraged performers from admitting injury or weakness. Wrestlers are taught to work through pain, to finish the match no matter what, to never show vulnerability. This mentality has led to countless performers continuing to wrestle with concussions, broken bones, and internal injuries that should have sent them to the hospital immediately. In some of the fatal incidents, witnesses reported that the fallen wrestler showed signs of distress before the final tragic moment but continued performing anyway, not wanting to break character or disappoint the fans. The business structure of wrestling has also contributed to these tragedies. Many wrestlers work as independent contractors rather than employees, meaning they have no health insurance, no workers' compensation, and no safety net if they're injured. This creates enormous financial pressure to work hard and take risks that employed athletes in other sports would never consider. Smaller promotions often lack proper medical personnel at ringside, adequate safety equipment, or even basic padding around the ring area. When something goes wrong at these venues, the response time and quality of care can mean the difference between life and death. The psychology of the performers themselves plays a role as well. Wrestlers are artists who take pride in their craft and want to give fans the best show possible. They develop signature moves and high spots that get crowd reactions, and there's pressure to keep raising the bar and doing more dangerous stunts to stand out in an overcrowded field. Young wrestlers especially feel they need to prove themselves by taking bigger risks and showing they can hang with the veterans. This leads to an arms race of increasingly dangerous maneuvers being performed by wrestlers who may not have the experience or training to execute them safely. The immediate aftermath of in-ring deaths has varied depending on the circumstances and location. In some cases, like Owen Hart, the promotion made the controversial decision to continue the event after the tragedy, a choice that was heavily criticized. In other cases, shows were immediately cancelled and venues evacuated. The wrestlers who were directly involved in the fatal incidents have had to live with the psychological trauma of knowing their actions, even if unintentional and part of the choreographed performance, resulted in someone's death. Many have spoken about the guilt, the nightmares, the constant replay of those final moments in their minds. The legal consequences have also varied widely. In most cases, no criminal charges were filed because the deaths were ruled accidental and occurred during a consensual sporting event. However, civil lawsuits have been common, with families of the deceased seeking damages from promoters, venue owners, and sometimes the wrestlers themselves. These cases have often revealed negligent safety practices, inadequate medical preparation, and a general disregard for performer well-being in favor of profit and entertainment value. The broader wrestling industry has slowly implemented reforms in response to these tragedies, though many argue the changes have been too little and too late. Major promotions now require more extensive medical evaluations, have protocols for concussion management, and employ medical personnel at all events. Certain high-risk moves have been banned or restricted. Younger wrestlers receive more comprehensive training in safe techniques. But independent wrestling, where most performers start their careers and many continue to work throughout their lives, remains largely unregulated. The financial pressures and cultural attitudes that lead to the original tragedies are still present in many parts of the industry. The fans who witness these deaths, whether in person or watching broadcasts, carry their own trauma. Imagine buying a ticket for entertainment and instead watching someone die in front of you. Many who were in attendance at these tragic events have described the confusion of not knowing if it was part of the show, the daunting horror as they realized something was genuinely wrong, and the guilt of having been entertained by the very violence that led to someone's death. Some have never watched wrestling again. The families left behind face the most devastating consequences. Spouses become widows, children lose parents, and all for what was supposed to be a performance, a show, scripted entertainment where nobody was supposed to actually get hurt. The financial impact can be catastrophic as well, with funeral expenses, lost income, and medical bills from failed resuscitation attempts. Wrestling's independent contractor model often means no death benefits, no pension, nothing to support the family after the performer is gone. Professional wrestling exists in a strange space between sport and theater, and this ambiguity has allowed dangerous practices to persist. It's not regulated like boxing or MMA, where athletic commissions enforce safety standards and medical protocols. But it's also not treated like stunt work in films, where extensive safety measures and insurance requirements are mandatory. Wrestlers fall through the cracks, getting the worst of both worlds with the physical dangers of combat sports but none of the protections. The question of responsibility in these tragedies is complex and uncomfortable. Is it the wrestler who delivered the fatal move, even though they were following the planned sequence and never intended harm? Is it the promotion that booked the match and created the environment where it occurred? Is it the venue that may have lacked proper safety equipment? Is it the regulatory system that failed to provide oversight? Or is it the fans themselves, whose appetite for increasingly extreme and dangerous performances drives the industry to take greater risks? The truth is that responsibility is shared across all these parties, a collective failure that has cost lives. The legacy of these fallen wrestlers extends beyond the tragic circumstances of their deaths. Many were beloved performers who brought joy to millions of fans over their careers. They were artists who dedicated their lives to their craft, fathers and mothers and siblings and friends who are missed every day by those who knew them. Their deaths serve as reminders that behind the larger-than-life characters and scripted storylines are real human beings with real families who love them and real bodies that can break. Professional wrestling continues today, with shows running somewhere in the world every single night. The industry has changed in some ways since these tragedies, with more awareness of safety issues and better medical protocols at major events. But the fundamental nature of the business remains unchanged. Wrestlers still perform dangerous moves for crowds seeking entertainment. Bodies still absorb punishment night after night. And the possibility of tragedy still lurks in every match, every bump, every routine sequence that could go horribly wrong if luck and timing don't align perfectly. The wrestlers who died in the ring didn't sign up to be martyrs or cautionary tales. They were performers pursuing their dreams, athletes showcasing their skills, entertainers giving audiences the show they paid to see. They deserve to be remembered for their contributions to wrestling and not just the tragic circumstances of their deaths. But their stories also need to be told so that future generations of wrestlers might be better protected, so that promoters might take safety more seriously, and so that fans might appreciate the very real risks these performers take every time they step through those ropes. This journey through wrestling's darkest chapter reminds us that entertainment should never come at the cost of human life. The industry owes it to these fallen performers and their families to continue improving safety standards, to provide better medical care and financial security for wrestlers, and to create a culture where performers feel empowered to protect their own health without fear of losing their spot or their income. Until wrestling truly reckons with these issues, the possibility of another tragedy remains, and that should be unacceptable to everyone who loves this unique form of entertainment. If this look at wrestling's hidden history opened your eyes to what these athletes truly risk, make sure to subscribe for more untold stories from inside the ring.